Deborah Donovan, Chair of the Data Governance Committee, present in Brandon, Mississippi. This meeting of the Data Governance Committee is being held today, Thursday, January 13th, 2022 at 9 a.m. pursuant to Mississippi Code annotated section 25415 with committee members present via teleconference. The notice of this meeting, including the date, time, place, and purpose, has been posted, and an audio recording is being made of this meeting, and minutes of the meeting will be recorded. As I call the names of the voting committee members, please state the location of your presence, just city and state, for the meeting. Alan Burrow. Melissa Biggs, proxy for Joanne Malone.
Present, Madison, Mississippi.
Thank you. Amy Brown. Okay. Lorinda Harrison.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Thank you. Jill Dent.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Tanette Smith.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Judy Nelson.
Brandon, Mississippi, present.
Scott Clements.
Present, Jackson, Mississippi.
Dexter Brookins.
Present, Jackson, Mississippi.
Kristen Nguyen.
Present, Brandon, Mississippi.
Monique Corley.
Present, Brandon, Mississippi.
Lee Johnson.
Present, Pearl, Mississippi.
Was that you, Wendy, that said present?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought you said my name.
That's okay. I thought it sounded like you. I was like, that doesn't sound like Monique. I gotcha. All right. Donna Hales.
Present in Fairview, Alabama.
Brian McGarty.
Present, Jackson, Mississippi.
Sheila Franklin Buey.
Present, Byron, Mississippi.
Sandra Robertson.
Present, Jackson, Mississippi.
Chancey Ford, proxy for Tammy Cressetti.
Present, Madison, Mississippi.
Robin Lamonis. Jackie Sampsell.
Present, Jackson, Mississippi.
Corey Murphy.
Present, Jackson, Mississippi.
Elizabeth Simmons. Sarita Donaldson.
Present, Jackson, Mississippi.
Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present at the location stated for conducting a meeting through teleconference means. Just a reminder, if you're a voting member, one of the people that I called out on that list, please have your cameras on while we're voting. Otherwise, if you need to turn them off to save bandwidth, or that's just your preference, that's okay, but we would like to have them on when we are voting. Right, so I will entertain a motion for approval of the November 18th, 2021 meeting minutes.
This is Wendy, so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Dexter, I second.
Thank you.
Dexter Brookins, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of today's agenda.
Jackie Sampson, I so move.
Thank you. And a second?
Donna Hales, I second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. All right, so first portion of our agenda today is work group reports. So I'm going to turn it over to Tina Mason for an update on the SBE policy manual review work group.
Thank you, Deborah. Good morning to everyone. This is going to be a quick update on this item. This work group is drawing to a close. We've gone through a lot of policies. There's just a few more to go where we need some clarification on if there's going to be any potential data impacted. So I have sent out an invite to those particular persons for later this month. So I just want to let you be aware of that. Keep an eye out on your calendar and your emails.
All right, any discussion there? Okay. Next up is an update on our data sharing agreement work group. Donna Hales.
Yes, thank you, Tina. Since the last meeting, there's been 2 documents that's had action taken on them. The first being that we extended the Center for Integration CIID AEM Corporation agreement, and that's been extended to the end of this year. And the other is a agreement, a case study under the Mississippi State Social Science Research Center around preschool, early childhood education, and that's kind of been an ongoing study or project that they've been working on. So that was a new agreement was executed for that. That's all.
Any questions or discussion? All right, and last but not least, our course code work group with Chancey.
Good morning, everyone. The course code work group worked diligently in developing an internal timeline and also an internal and external course code request. I believe the course code work group, everyone had approved the updates and revision on that timeline and the request code form. And so we're hoping that these 2 forms will help us in when we preparing for our approved course code manual. And we're planning to have that ready for district for pre-registration, hopefully by the first week of February. And that's it on my report.
All right, thank you, Chancey. Any questions or combo on that? All right, I'll move into our discussion and approval section of the agenda. The first item was an item that was brought forth to the committee during our last meeting and was tabled so we could all do a little more research on that and to refresh everyone's memory. This is an item brought by Dr. Robertson around personnel attendance. We, for many years, collected personnel attendance as part of a school improvement reporting, but that was kind of under the old model of school improvement and our reporting requirements that changed when we moved under the Every Student Succeeds Act. So as we were reviewing all of our data domains, as we're going through our MSIS 2.0 current state work, we were reviewing that with Dr. Robertson in her office, and they identified that that was a data collection that they no longer needed. So we wanted to bring it forth to the Data Governance Committee to see if we could discontinue that collection since we no longer had any federal reporting requirement or state reporting requirement that required that data to be collected. I know a couple of people just wanted to do some extra checking before we agreed to vote to discontinue that, so it was tabled at the last meeting. Are there any updates or discussion that anyone wants to have before we bring this back for a vote?
Yeah, just thank you guys for the opportunity to allow my team and I to review further. And at the conclusion of our review, we had no rationale for the requirement remaining for the most part. So no opposition there. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any other discussions or questions?
Only question I have, this is Sarita Donson, is when we decide on the vote to discontinue, it will become effective when?
So that's a good question. I'm going to make sure I get my timelines right with Tina, but I believe we would be looking at a change for the 2023-2024 school year at this point.
Yes.
I think we could make it optional, and it still be intact for the 2022-23 school year if the committee is agreeable to that. All right, hearing no other discussion, we'll put this up for a vote. Do I have a motion to accept the proposed deletion of this data collection?
This is Corey. So moved.
Thanks, Corey.
Lorinda Harrison, I second.
Who was that?
Lorinda Harrison, I second.
Thank you, Lorinda. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Right, now I think we have 3 or 4 updates to bring to the committee, some discussion items. First up is an update from Scott Clements in the Office of Healthy Schools on a nursing data system.
Hey folks, this is really just kind of informational. Unfortunately, I don't think it will be of help to others on the call, but you never know where the connection might be. So we want to make sure everybody was aware of what we've got. And actually, we've had a school nurse database since about 2007 at Office of Healthy Schools. And it's been patched together for years, and we've kind of kept it running. And we're actually undergoing kind of really more of a full rewrite now, partly for usability, but also security to keep us up to date. I guess one of the most important parts of for the committee is there's no student level data collected actually in the school nurse database. Nurses report things like number of encounters for, let's say, insulin, or number of trainings they gave on tobacco cessation. And that's partly because some of our nurses are funded by tobacco cessation grant money. It's a voluntary system. If they have a grant, they have to report into it. If they don't have a grant, we hope they will. Many do, but it's not required. And I guess, the data we get out of it, we use for a report to the legislature. And we know that it is not hard data, so to speak, because it's voluntary. There's not a school nurse in every school to begin with. Only a percentage of them report. So, if we were going on a trip somewhere, it is not GPS coordinates. It's not even a good detailed map, but it is road signs. So we kind of use it for trend analysis, I guess would be where we stand. If we see an upward spike like we have for the last several years in insulin diabetes, that's an indicator for us and something we can report back to the legislature and helps us at Healthy Schools direct our training where we want to go with the nurses every year. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's just a little brief overview of what we have down here. Like I say, I don't think it'll be helpful to anybody else, but at least it's out there if you come across that, or if you have questions for us, we're happy to help you with them.
This is Tina Mason. I do want to say thank you for sharing that, Scott, and I understand where you're coming from when you say it may not be helpful, but with respect to the whole agency, all the data that flows in and all the data that flows out, being aware of the systems that we have and what we do collect. So what your office collects and what you're working on is very important. And so we want to recognize that. And we will have updates from other areas. I know that next month, hopefully we're going to hear from Dr. Murphy about a system that's being updated, just as we did from Deborah last time we met when she did the update for Census 2.0. So I appreciate that you came and shared that information, and we hope to hear more from different offices about different systems and what's going on and what data is in there and how it's used.
Hey, we're glad to do so. You know how it is. We get excited about what we do, in our own offices, and sometimes it's nice just to let other people know what we're doing, down at Greymont. So, yeah, anybody, if you have any questions, call me, and happy to help.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Thanks. I learned something new today. Didn't know we collected all that, so it's always a good thing. All right. Next up is an update from me on proposed changes to EdFax collections, beginning with school year 22-23, going through school year 24-25. Several of you heard from me over the past couple of weeks with the proposed changes that are out. They are out for public comment right now. So this is our state's opportunity to provide input into what actually becomes a requirement for collection in those years. Public comment ends tomorrow. So I'm hoping to compile all the feedback that everyone provided to me thus far in the document. Thank you all for taking the time to do that. I'm going to go over kind of a high-level summary of what is being proposed and what we see our impact may or may not be, and excuse the plain Word document that I have to present this in. I didn't have time to pull together a real formal presentation on this information. But I just wanted to run through really quickly all the things that are being proposed and what that might mean for us. So I'm going to break it down the way that that EdFax has it broken down in their layout, with the first section being special education. Most of this revolved around comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. I think I got that acronym right, for CCEIS. I'm not sure if we have anybody from special education office on today, but most of the information is around that. It's something that we collect some parts of that information through MCAPS, through the grant application software right now. But it looks like they're asking us to get more detail about the students who are receiving those services in the school districts. And they're also asking us to change the way we report personnel for staff that serve 5-year-olds. There's been a move recently in special education to distinguish between 5-year-olds who are in preschool and 5-year-olds who are in kindergarten. In the past, special education data has been strictly broken up by age, ages 3 to 5 and ages 6 to 21, but they've kind of moved lately to distinguishing those 5-year-olds and what kind of environment they're in. So they're just asking us to align our staff reporting to that. And that's not really an impact for us because we already captured what teachers are doing by grade level and not really by age. So that aligns nicely with the way we have data. The next section is around Title I changes. They've changed a few reporting formats and timelines, which, means a little bit of work for us to rearrange, the reports and how we get them submitted, but no data collection impacts there. They are asking us to collect more and report on more detail around Title I Part A funds that districts reserve for homeless services and trying to identify students that are receiving services using those funds. So you see right now that's something that we collect the funding part of that in MCAPS, but we'll have to work with federal programs with OTSS to look at how we're going to identify students. Our normal mode of that is just to match up the funding, which districts are receiving to the funding with the student data that we have in MSIS to complete that reporting. And then same thing for a couple of other special funds that they're asking us to be able to kind of separate that out from the general title funds. And then there's a change in reporting accountability component. Because every state's accountability systems are somewhat different, the way that we report up to the federal government right now is we might have to combine, let's say, U.S. history score points and science points together to come into one category. And so it's really hard to match that up with what we report here locally at our state level reporting. So EDFACS is actually changing the way that they're getting those reports from each state and allowing us to detail those out and basically report it more the way that we report it at the state. So it will require some changes to the actual report, but we think that that's a positive change because it's more of a true reflection of how we collect data. Title I, neglected or delinquent. This is probably one that I think is going to have the biggest impact in terms of data collection for us here at the agency, because right now those are collected together. If a student's neglected or delinquent, either one, or in a program for those. And now they're asking us to break that out by neglected, delinquent, or in at-risk programs. So a lot of this right now is collected by survey data. So we'll probably be looking at how we can improve those surveys and make it more clear and a better data collection for that information. And they're also asking for a new collection on recidivism. I think I said that word right. So again, we'll have to look at what we're doing with the surveys currently and pull that together. And then for Title III programs, they're asking for a new disaggregation of data. So we'll pull that together as well. Again, I think this one is something that we already have in MSIS. It's not going to be a huge impact for us. In general, some of the general data for students, there is a change from reporting GED students to students who earned a high school equivalency diploma. Right now, that's no change for MDE because we only collect information on GEDs. I think if this is one that goes through, we may warrant some future conversation with the Data Governance Committee to see if there is any other high school equivalency diploma options that exist in the state that we might need to collect data on in order to report. There's also a bit of a change with lunch data and the timeline that it's being reported, and wanting to align that with the same time that we have to report direct certification to USDA. And then they want chronic absenteeism broken out by a couple of more subgroups, which that part is not an issue. And they also want unduplicated counts. And so I think we have a comment in there about really being clear about how each state calculates chronic absenteeism when it comes from the differences in calculating it at the state level and the district level and the school level, because if you have a student that's highly mobile, that moves around a lot, they might not be within a district from one school to another. they may not be chronically absent at one of those schools, but if you put all that together, and report it at the district level, they may meet the threshold and be counted there. So we just want people to understand how that data is being calculated and presented. Under assessment, they want us to separate out the files that we submit for grades 3 through 9 and high school separately. So no change to a data collection, just a change to the way we report that. And then for the states that do conduct additional tests, such as advanced assessment, innovative assessment, demonstration authority assessment, or locally selected nationally recognized assessments, they also want to start collecting that data. That's not going to be an impact for MDE because we don't have any of those additional assessments. And then one of the new collections that I think we will have to talk about is they want to add a new subgroup for special education students to collect their disability type, not just whether it's a student with disabilities or not, but what the specific disability is. And we'll have to talk about how we could manage that data collection, because we collect and certify that data on December 1 each year, and most assessments happen at the end of the school year, so there's likely to be a bit of a gap and some missing data for students that enter or exit between December 1 and the assessment window. So that'll take a little work for us to work through. And speaking of nurses from our earlier conversation, they are proposing for staff a new collection on health specialists, including nurses. So right now, this is not for sure going in. They're just trying to get information from each state on how you define health specialist, what different types you have. Is it mostly nurses in the school or other types of that? So you all provided feedback on that. I appreciate that. And then there's a few things that they're proposing to retire for us not to have to report anymore. That is magnet status, like schools that are considered magnet schools. We won't have to report that. Who the chief state school officer is, I think, not like obviously USED wants to know that, but reporting it through this file, I think, was not efficient for them. They get that information through other means. And then poverty quartiles is something that we use a lot on our report card right now, is how we define like teachers who are teaching in high poverty or low poverty schools. So they're actually considering removing that data group from how we report and switching that to census data. So we do have a comment that we'll be submitting around that and the challenges that may come for reporting data in our public reports, and with some and how census data looks in Mississippi and the participation rate in that. And then the last item is around the permitted values to report sex or gender, as it's kind of labeled in two different ways in most federal reporting. So some states do collect more than 2 permitted values right now. So right now, federal reporting still just has the 2 values, male and female, to report, but some states have begun to collect other options there. So right now, if you are a state that collects more than 2, you just don't report anything that doesn't fall into the male or female category, which means if you add up male and female, it's not going to total, the total number of students. And that's how they've handled that thus far in federal reporting. So they are proposing to ask a new, what they call metadata question to all the states to understand what they collect and how they report it, so that it can explain some of those discrepancies that happen in data for a state that does collect more than 2. So right now that doesn't affect MDE or Mississippi data, but I think we do support, that information being available so you can understand all the other data that is reported. All right, I blew through a lot. Sorry for talking at you guys for a long time, but I know a lot of you have reviewed a lot of these things in depth when you went through that proposed document. Is there anything that anybody wants to particularly call out or bring up around that? No.
I noticed they were switching from the poverty to census data.
Mhm.
So how is that going to impact MDE?
Well, I think that's a question that they didn't give enough context around, and that's something we plan to submit a public comment about. Because right now under ESSA, there are requirements to report data based off high poverty and low poverty, and we use those quartiles to determine that. I don't know if this change, it not being in an EDFACS file, I don't know if that change means that we can not continue to use that same data to determine low poverty and high poverty. Or if it's just being discontinued from EDFACS. But we did note concerns with sampling and participation in some of the census data collections in Mississippi because of our rural landscape. All right. Well, thank you all for your input. Again, I'll be compiling kind of all the feedback that we have received and submitting that as a public comment. I will, of course, copy everyone with the final document that I create so you can see what gets submitted. And I'll send out a link as well to the public comment page so you can see what other states and other people are saying about the data collection. But this helps us. It's not, 100% certain that these things are going to change because it is still out for public comment. And sometimes the state's input, does either shift timelines or give some clarification to what they're trying to collect. But for those of you that went through and know that you have a collection that's being impacted, just keep that in the back of your mind that, you start planning for those changes. All right, now we have an update on data quality plans and ESSER ARP data impacts from Tina.
Yes, you do. Thank you, Deborah. First, I'll address the data quality plan. For the benefit of some of our newest committee members, I'm going to take just a second and give a little background. The data quality plan is a tool that's going to assist us as a committee on our journey to reach this committee's mission, which is to promote accurate, usable data while maintaining its privacy and security, of course. This tool is going to also help us to be good stewards of the data that MDE collects and utilizes. A few benefits including, addressing those potential data quality issues, improving the data collection process if needed, and trusting the data when we're making those decisions, when y'all are making those big decisions. And all of those decisions support our MDE strategic goals. So I'm happy to report that I have from all of the program offices that were required to complete a data quality plan. I'm just missing one, but I want to say a big thank you for all the work that everyone has done to get those completed. The next steps for those plans is going to include, aligning them with that data dictionary work that we're all aware of. And that is going along with our Census 2.0 project that Deborah has talked about several times. And then there'll be some time that we allocate annually to always review these plans and update them as needed when there's changes that are in our data collections. So I'm going to pause between this one and the next one to see if there's any questions or any concerns about those plans. Okay, not hearing any. So next I'll address the ESSER ARP data impact document. Again, a little background, that document was created so that we could stop and think, have a pause moment, and capture anything, anything that would be impacting our data collections that could potentially impact those areas because of these funding sources. So we want to remain mindful that this is obviously quick changes that are taking place with tight timelines and deadlines. So this template was just a motion for us to go through and to stop and think about what could be potentially impacted when it comes to our data collections and our data systems. There are still some program areas, I have a handful of those that have not provided any input. I did send an email reminder out with the link to the document and instructions on Tuesday. So if you would just take a moment and go through there and make sure that you have placed your comment. Part of the instructions include that if there's nothing, please just indicate not applicable or we don't have anything. That way I know that you have touched that document and you have reviewed it. So again, are there any questions or thoughts on that?
No. Okay, thanks, Tina. And then last item on the agenda is the Data Governance Committee 2022 timeline.
Again, get to listen to me one more time. I did want to take a few minutes to share with the committee some key dates. And so in your backup material for today, you will find this document, the 2022 timeline, tongue twister. As the committee does focus on the many tasks that each of you have within your program areas, I just want us to make sure that we stay aware of the big picture as well. There's obviously lots of moving parts within data governance, and so to assist us with that, I created this overarching timeline or calendar, if you will, and to show those things that are between January and December of our new year. The timeline can be adjusted and probably will be as we get into progressing throughout the year, because we want to make sure that everything that we're doing is aligning with our goals and our objectives of this committee. I do want to take just a moment and point out on that document, there are things like the Mississippi legislative session has been noted on there when they started and when they're ending, because that does impact some deadlines for this committee. So I'm going to highlight that big one that we always hear about, which is the change request submissions. Those are going to be for the 23-24 school year. That date is going to be Monday, May 9th. That deadline for those submissions is Monday, May 9th. So I just want to highlight that one since that one seems to be a hot topic. But this is going to begin that process for reviewing those requests that come before this committee. So I just want to encourage all of you to take that, talk it through with your staff, when you're doing your program area updates, and include those dates in assisting you into accomplishing what task you need to accomplish throughout this year.
Okay, thank you, Tina. And I know there's already a lot of action happening in the legislation, so we will keep moving on that. Let's see, I see a comment. Judy Nelson comment, will OTSS incorporate the information required for the ARP annual performance report? So that's a good question, Judy. I think it sounds like that would be something that we could work through in the ESSER ARP data impact template that Tina sent out. So if you want to take a look at that and fill in anything that's going to be needed or any impacts for that reporting, then we can set up a meeting to go over any changes in data collection that may come as a result of that and figure out what the best way to get that collected and reported will be. I hope that answered that question. But that was kind of the goal of that ARP data impact, was to kind see if anybody had programs or anything that was coming about that were gonna include a reporting component that we needed to start looking at and working on. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other comments or discussion? Oh, Sanja, so you had a question about data quality plans?
Yes. Tina, I'm sorry I didn't lift this up when you gave us the space to do so, but I was really trying to figure out how to ask the question. And maybe I missed something in your discussion, but as the program office lays out its data quality plan, it's submitted, is there any way that we might know whether something was not acceptable, right? Or was something was off based on what you guys were expecting from our submissions? I think that's what I'm asking. Is there a checkpoint in there to say, hey, Sanja, your team submitted the data quality plan. We have a question or need a clarification about this particular thing that was in the plan. So is there a review process on your end, or is it just something we revisit that's self-monitored within our own program office? I hope I asked that right. I think I did.
There is not a checklist, if you will, no, because obviously these are very individual for every program area. But yes, we will take time to go through those as we're working through the MSIS 2.0 project. The fact that you are going to be aware of what data is coming through your office and what you're responsible for and touching. So as we grow through that process, you will be able to monitor your plan and be able to update that and make it better, or more applicable. But I can let Dee Dee add to that if she wants to.
I think that's perfect, Tina. We'll be those are going to be great starting points for when we sit down for MSIS 2.0 and talk about your data needs. Because a lot of your data needs are related to what you report, what you need for your reporting. So those will be good resources for that as well.
Thank you.
And Sarita had a question about, does Data Governance Committee need to have scheduled workshops at a minimum quarterly? So, yeah, I don't know, Tina, do you want to take that, or I can?
I did give her a thumbs up because I actually have been thinking about that, Sarita. So because I know that we did a really big kickoff workshop last year when we, formulated data governance here at MDE. And so, yes, I am mindful of that. I think that if we had some of those, that would be helpful because we could address things like the data quality plans or any other topics that interest the committee.
Don't worry, we'll be talking to all of you when we start all these new projects. So we'll have, and I think that'll highlight any needs we have, to come back together and refresh our memories on what we're, our processes, or, if we see something that we have in our procedures right now for Data Governance Committee that's just not going to work with the new system, that we're going to need to address or put some revisions in. So I do think that's a good idea. If we don't have a reason to meet, we won't meet. But I do think there's plenty of opportunities for some training, refresh for new members of the committee, things like that. Any other questions, discussions? Right. If that's it, I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved. This is Wendy.
Thank you.
And second, this is Dexter.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So funny, like just waiting for it to trail off. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you all for joining us today, and you have a good rest of your week.